And thank you for joining Treasury Strategy's 7th Annual State of the Treasury Profession Message. I'm Kathy Gregg, a Treasury Strategies partner, and I'm joined here in Chicago by Tony Carfang, also a Treasury Strategies partner, and by Moni Lindsay, Managing Director and Head of our London office. We have 1,400 people registered for this webinar today. Frankly, I'm glad I can't see you all because I think I'd be just a tiny bit nervous. All of you who are registered will receive a link to the recording and the deck by email by the end of the week. We're all here today because basically we all have the same goal, which is to make 2013 the best year ever. And we have 4 topics to cover today in pursuit of that. First, the transition to Treasury 3.0. Secondly, some new thoughts about the corporate financial services provider balance. Third, Treasury in a world of corporate structure change. And fourth, building a new Treasury team. And when we're done, you'll be better equipped to achieve that common goal, having thought about what's working in Treasury and what's not, and what to do in 2013. It's hard to believe that 2013 is the 5th year since the financial catastrophe. In 2010, Treasury Strategy said we had to start dealing with the regulatory response to the crisis, which we predicted would be massive, intrusive, and global. And we were right. In 2011, we started talking about the elephant in the room. We predicted that low interest rates were here to stay, that Treasury had to start getting used to the upside as well as the downside of that. I think we were right about that too. And last year, we foresaw recovery fatigue. When is this long trip back to normal finally going to end? Right again. So, what is Treasury Strategy seeing for 2013? We think we're turning the corner. There is still a lot of regulatory hangover, and there are still financial repairs being rolled out. And some economies will certainly be recovering for a long time yet. So we're not just yet ready for a parade. But Treasury Strategies believes we are solidly into a different phase of recovery. Probably still going to be seeing the ups and downs, but not nearly the extremes that we've had. And there's some good evidence for this. The banking community certainly seems like it's on firmer ground. In the U.S., unlimited deposit insurance expired at the end of last year. It was a non-event. The Basel III requirements have been pushed out a few years. And European banks are paying back their LTRO, their long-term refinancing option, to the ECB. All of these indications that bank capital is much improved. Corporations are much reassured about their bank soundness, either that or they believe in too big to fail. Secondly, we've also had a little more sovereign stability. The euro didn't break up, Greece didn't secede, long-term rates on Spanish and Italian debt have fallen quite a bit. And finally, we're starting to see the teams that orchestrated recovery retiring. In the U.S., we have Geithner, head of Treasury, Shapiro, who headed the SEC, and Sheila Bair, who headed the FDIC, all riding off into the sunset. So we at Treasury Strategies believe we have turned a corner. Now, let me hand off to Moni Lindsay to discuss the penultimate turn-the-corner transition from Treasury 2.0 to 3.0.
Thank you, Kathy. The 2.0 to 3.0 journey is evidence that we're turning the corner. Pre-crisis, we were observing the emergence of Treasury 3.0 with our corporate and our financial services clients. We were working with our corporate clients to aggressively centralize, automate, streamline, and integrate. They were creating a Treasury that enabled them to focus less on the day-to-day tactical requirements of running Treasury and more on the analytical and strategic. They were establishing Treasury internally as a critical partner within the organization. They were increasing Treasury's importance. We were also working with our banking clients and other provider clients to develop and deliver the solutions that enable corporate treasuries to be more strategic and critical partners within their organizations. Solutions that facilitated faster access to more data, more accurate data, the tools and technologies to make sense of the data, solutions that integrated far deeper into the working capital and liquidity continuums, and visibility and transparency to the liquidity and transactions. The importance and influence of Treasury within the organization was on the rise, with the structural and technology initiatives underway to support that rise. The crisis saw a brief halt to the initiatives required to support a 3.0 Treasury as companies and providers lost their funding and resources. But we're seeing that funding return for Treasury 3.0 type projects, centralization and global technology integration in particular. The crisis also highlighted the critical role that Treasury as the financial nerve center of the organization and has since accelerated 3.0 initiatives. While 2.0 processes, roles, and solutions are still prevalent in the industry, what is becoming far less prevalent are 2.0 initiatives and far more prevalent are 3.0 initiatives. While perhaps not fully meeting the definition of a paradigm shift, there is overwhelming recognition within the companies and their banking, technology, and other solution providers that Treasury and related working capital functions are playing a far more critical role in the organization, that of the financial nerve center, and the need for solutions to support that role. Let me share with you some of the shifts we're seeing that tell us we have turned the corner and are on the 3.0 journey. On the corporate side, counterparty risk is a perfect example. In the past, it was siloed with minimum counterparty requirements tracked in Excel spreadsheets, maybe weekly or monthly or more after the fact. Now, no one is depending on the rating agencies alone to assess counterparty risk. New techniques and technologies and solutions are in place to track stock prices, cross-default swaps, news feeds, credit due diligence, and real-time or near real-time visibility to counterparty exposures. Investment policies have been embedded in solutions with investments automatically directed to another counterparty once a counterparty limit is reached, and alerts automatically sent out. No longer will Treasury's first response to the CEO's question, do we have any exposure to Lehman, be, no we don't. Oh, wait a minute, yes we do. They're in our credit facility. They are a derivatives counterparty. In fact, we are seeing many treasurers take on responsibility for monitoring and managing both financial and credit risk within the organization. Another example on the corporate side is payments. In a 2.0 environment, payments are siloed and often decentralized. There is static management of payment terms and superficial analysis of supplier risk. In a 3.0 environment, payments are multi-channel, integrated with Treasury's liquidity decisions, and there is a greater integration with suppliers. Now for a few examples on the provider side. Solutions are point products in a 2.0 environment with services centered around settlement and clearing. Individual products and services are sold without consideration of how the client knits their services together in order to manage or optimize liquidity, in order to optimize access to liquidity. In a 3.0 environment, integrated solutions are sold and extend far deeper into the client's working capital and liquidity value chains. The integrated solution is determined based on a deeper understanding of the client's needs. On the channel side, in a 2.0 environment, the web is for transactions and access to data. The mobile is just a mini web. In a 3.0 environment, the web is end-to-end customer experience, and mobile is a business device. Now, you can probably tell there are clearly 2.0 terms and 3.0 terms. 2.0 terms include siloed, point products, data, transactions. Outsourcing is a last resort. 3.0 terms include integrated, open, interoperable, intelligence, end-to-end customer experience. Partnering has become a strategic competency both with corporates and financial services providers. As part of the 3.0 Ready Treasury, the organization is better positioned to take on any new challenges that emerge in the years ahead. As we've seen in the past 5 years, change is a constant, and Treasury must be adaptable. A 3.0 Treasury has the flexibility and scalability to support the organization under any conditions. With mergers and acquisitions likely to be prevalent in the years ahead, having in place a 3.0 Treasury will be a significant strategic advantage. We're firmly on the 3.0 journey. Whether a corporate treasury or a financial services provider, the question you must ask yourself with each initiative is whether it is moving you toward a 3.0 target state, a critical requirement for long-term success. And now Tony's going to talk to you about the new corporate and financial services equilibrium.
Thank you, Moni. The balance is shifting in the marketplace. Over the last 5 years, we've all had a real challenge. Our clients have felt trapped by the marketplace, trapped by their financial services providers. Access to capital and counterparty risk were paramount. It was all about survival. Financial flexibility was restricted. Our clients, corporate treasurers' options were limited, and that was frustrating, and frankly, the times were tense. Consider that the capital markets were very tight, bank lending was limited, and the regulatory and economic uncertainty actually froze markets. Now, regulators held the upper hand, constraining the activities of banks, and in turn, banks then had difficulty in accommodating all of the needs of their customers. But now we're turning the corner. A couple weeks ago, we gave our January quarterly corporate cash briefing, and in that briefing, in preparation for that briefing, we surveyed about 600 Treasury professionals and noted a huge change from what we heard the prior year. In terms of the main concerns for corporate Treasury in 2013, access to capital and counterparty risk management dropped from number 1 and number 2 on their list to number 3 and number 4. That's huge. The number 1 and number 2 issues were economic conditions and regulation. But again, we think this is a major sea change and a shift out of survival mode. Now, 3 factors combine to make this a great time to become more proactive, to get out of the trenches, and to make things happen. First of all, capital markets and bank lending are opening up. From the issuer's perspective, there's an easing in both the debt and the equity markets. From the investor perspective, as banks are now moving off of life support, their securities, their CDs, their commercial paper, their deposits are now investment eligible, which increases corporate investing opportunities. Number 2, corporate cash has peaked over the last year. Despite what you hear from pundits, we measure this, it peaked about 4 quarters ago. That tells us that the markets have stabilized and corporate treasurers' perceived need for reserves has declined. Furthermore, as counterparty risk subsides, there are more opportunities to deploy that cash. Number 3, evolving payment system changes also alter the balance. In fact, to Moni's point, technology and payment services is lowering the switching cost as treasurers move out of 2.0 solutions and drive 3.0 results. So for the first time in 5 years, Treasury Strategies believes the corporate treasurers and their financial service providers now have flexibility and now have options. This means that there's an opportunity to rethink the capital structure. There are more ways to access low-cost capital in financial markets. There are also more ways to access capital across your supply chain. We think this will lead to 2013 creating an opportunity to rethink some of our financial services relationships. And that's true both in the payment space, the liquidity space, and the long-term capital markets. This all says flexibility. This is good news. First time in 5 years that we're out of the trenches. Now, to be sure, memories are long, and we still want to be very cautious. Companies want to reciprocate with the banks that stood by them during the crisis, and as a result, they don't want to radically restructure. However, opportunities for the rethinking and re-architecting abound. Again, in the payments relationships, liquidity relationships, and long-term capital relationships, Treasury Strategies believes 2013 is the year to turn the corner. Now back to Kathy with an in-depth look at how corporate structural changes will impact Treasury in 2013.
Okay, Tony, thanks. Most of the corporations we work with in our consulting practice are aggressively looking for growth and profitability in multiple ways that transform what the company actually looks like. Many of them, of course, are focused on the growth markets, the bricks and the TIMs, and have been for quite a while. Some firms are looking for globalities where they can find more favorable regulatory environments. Lots of our customers have told us that at these interest rates, their best investment option is themselves, so they become very acquisitive. Then there are whole industries that are characterized by merger and consolidation, the pharmas, healthcare, high-tech, etc. And finally, there are some companies destructuring to get better valuations, doing splits, divestitures, and spin-offs. And the question we want to pose is, how do you do Treasury when tomorrow doesn't look at all like today? And we've got a three-part answer to that. The first is, you need to build a Treasury organization that can adapt. We just have to assume that our firms are going to change, and our treasuries will have to be responsive to that. We'll always have to get the basics done, the cash, the liquidity, the payments. But in addition to that, there's going to be a whole other layer of work as you have to incorporate new regions, new globalities, new structures and entities, new regulations, new financial restrictions. In the past, a merger and acquisition, a split, might have been considered a rare event. Now it's more like a way of life. The second tool for this changing corporate structure environment is a roadmap for change. Moni pointed out that 3.0, Treasury 3.0, isn't a destination, but a journey, an evolution. And your plan for all of that is your roadmap. We need to think of the roadmaps as living and not static, as responsive to how our companies are going to change. Our roadmaps need to take into account the fact that if we're acquisitive, we might be acquiring things that can be leveraged: people, technology, treasury structures, regional treasuries that we didn't already have, etc. Our roadmaps need to contemplate when we reach certain kinds of critical mass. When is it going to make sense for us to establish another regional treasury? When will we need a new liquidity pool in some other part of the world? And finally, a roadmap may have to incorporate the possibility of a spinoff and how to build a treasury from the ground up fast. Thirdly, our treasuries need to have flexible and scalable technology architecture that can handle how our companies are likely to change. We can't be buying treasury technology any longer on today's requirements. We have to buy to support growth. Previously, most of us bought based on discrete functionality we were interested in. For example, can that piece of software do long-haul hedge accounting? Now, our software decisions need to be more about flexibility and scalability as well as supporting automation. For example, will this software support STP out of our payment factory? Because Treasury 3.0 is characterized by the automation of whole chunks of financial processes, whether they're regional or global. This flexible, scalable architecture also argues for flexibility boosters like SWIFT, STP, good integration into the company's ERP. And you can imagine as these solutions become more complicated, as the provider landscape you're looking at is more challenging, external assistance on these things is going to be more important than ever. I just want to mention a couple of pitfalls in adapting to corporate structural change. The first being that You have to keep pace with these changes. They're going to keep coming at you with less and less time to catch up. We do work with companies where poorly integrated acquisitions literally become an albatross. There's no time to go back and fix what they didn't get done. We work with companies where they have 6 months for a spinoff to set up a fully equipped treasury before their support agreement ends. You have to keep pace. Another pitfall is the failure to automate. There are simply no heroes of manual treasury processing any longer. Another pitfall, saving pennies instead of buying for flexibility or automation. And finally, working with 2.0 resources, either internal or external. The problem with this is it kind of paints your thinking into a corner. Now, you're bound to be asking how on earth to get all this done. And Tony will now discuss new options for creative resourcing.
Thank you, Kathy. Building the 3.0 Treasury team is front and center. It's the first order of business for 2013. As we said before, the last 5 years have been trying. You've all been stretched to the breaking point. Belt tightening, budget cuts, turnover, retirements. You all have smaller staffs, yet a broader scope of responsibilities. As we talk to our clients, the message we hear over and over again is, we're tired, we're exhausted. We've been focused on execution, visibility of cash, risk management, access to capital. Our heads have been down. We've been slogging through. Some companies supported their skeleton crews with resources for better technology. However, most did not. And even for those who did, they faced a dilemma: how to implement new technology with a skeleton crew. After all, you all have day jobs too. So as a result, key projects got put on the back burner. No budget, no people. And in addition, we saw emerging over the last couple of years a demographic trend that is going to continue for a long time to come, and that is an aging workforce. Our clients are seeing retirements, they're seeing turnover, they're seeing unplanned absences, and as you figure out how to build your 3.0 Treasury team, we need to incorporate the certainty that that will continue. So where does this leave us today? As we turn the corner, we need to take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of us. And that means two things. Corporate treasuries need to, number one, add capacity, and number two, add intellectual capital. Those two are musts if we're going to turn the corner and empower Treasury to become the financial nerve center that it needs to be. Our teams need to have strategic and analytic teams in order to support the more sophisticated demands going forward in 3.0. We need teams with command of both internal and external issues to take advantage of the opportunities. For example, on the external front, as you saw in Moni's chart with all of the cogs, corporate treasury staffs need to be facile in the financial markets, obviously, but also need to be able to conduct the dialogue with regulators and with investors. Bank relationships are changing and continue to be very important. Conversations with the rating agencies and reporting to the rating agencies are critical. One of the things we saw emerging during the crisis was the need to communicate to the CEO and to boards. And in addition to that, the supply chain initiatives are requiring that Treasury be very adept at communicating with the customers and the suppliers. After all, these could be a major source of financing or a major use of working capital, depending on how you organize to do this. In terms of internal focus, we believe the Treasury staffs need to be much more technologically adept than we see in many of our consulting engagements. Advanced technology, and I'm not talking about Treasury management systems here, although they are becoming more advanced. We're talking here at Treasury Strategies about a giant step beyond that. Analytics, big data. I mean, having access to millions and millions of pieces of information about your customers, about your suppliers, about the financial markets, about your competitors, Treasury is the logical point for this to reside. In 3.0, we have to figure out how to make this happen. That's a tall order. Now, one of the things that we see as an emerging trend and gaining in acceptance is temporary Treasury staff augmentation to help add capacity and add intellectual capital. And we see four primary uses of staff augmentation: special projects, interim staffing, staffing for corporate restructurings, and staffing for technology selection and implementation. In terms of special projects, we see actually two different kinds of staffing needs and opportunities here. The first are the subject matter experts. There are many issues that fall into Treasury's lap that require deep subject matter expertise, but perhaps only for a very short period of time. And our clients are now finding it's much easier to bring that in from the outside rather than retrofit, retrain, and shuffle things around internally. The second need we see for special projects is project management. And very often it's much more effective to have an outsider come in to be the tough guy, to be the person to crack the whip and get the project moving. There's less baggage, there's less need for a long-term relationship. You come in and you get the job done. Interim staffing was the second use that I talked about, and here we're seeing this for temporary absences, and we're also seeing this while searches are going on for permanent staff. Corporate restructuring. Kathy talked about how corporate structures are changing, yet within Treasury, these are a major commitment of time. Again, you have day jobs. Doing an acquisition or setting up a brand new Treasury for a spinoff is out of scope. I mean, this is really hard work. And the final use is technology selection and implementation. And again, clearly you want to keep the maintenance skills on your staff, but selection and implementation is something that you don't do every day. In fact, it's something you don't do every couple of years. So it makes no sense to have a large number of those skills permanently on staff when, in fact, so many resources are available externally. So where does this leave us? We see a 5-point action plan here. First, we all need a business plan, a Treasury 3.0 roadmap. Where do we want to go and how are we going to get there? Secondly, we need an organizational blueprint. We need to answer questions like, are we going to be centralized, decentralized, what's local, what goes into a services center? Third, we need a staffing plan. What are the roles that we want permanent staff to complete, and what are the appropriate roles for supplemental staff? Number four, we need to develop and nurture Treasury 3.0 skill sets. After all, we all grew up in Treasury 2.0. This is new. This is changing rapidly, and we need to develop a plan to incorporate those skill sets. And then finally, we need an augmentation resource plan. Consider the use of consultants. Now, we're at the 27-minute mark. You were going to get an ad at some point. But there are also staffing points, staffing firms, independent contractors. We've even seen clients bring back retirees for special projects where they had specific expertise. So as we said earlier, we're turning the corner, and we need to do two things. We need to add capacity, and we need to add intellectual capital. This all takes careful planning and solid execution. For that, Kathy Gregg will tell us how to pull this all together.
So, we at Treasury Strategies think we have turned the corner. We all want to make this the best year yet, and we have just shared our most up-to-date view of the opportunities for Treasury in 2013. The value of moving deliberately to Treasury 3.0. The new corporate bank equilibrium that provides more flexibility and options than we've seen in recent years. Building your Treasury for change, for flexibility and scalability in the face of how our firms are transforming. And finally, creative resourcing options, new ways to get the job done. So in terms of next steps, take the notes that you've made this morning and highlight the most important item you've identified and start working on it today. And as you think about these ideas, if you want to talk them over or if you need some help, call us. Because that's what we do at Treasury Strategies. We help companies and their financial services providers achieve their goals. This concludes our webinar.